Okay, it is 6:02 a.m. and I'm gonna get into this. Wait a minute, do I have it open? Yeah, gonna read this article. It's a bit of a long name. Theorizing Things, Building Worlds, Why the New Materialisms Deserve Literary Imagination. And I read this a few months ago. I guess it was originally shared by my friend Asha and then reshared by my friend Matt. And then I finally read it, and as I recall, this is a very good article, very rich. Lots to think about. New materialism is something I'm interested in, and the sort of wedding together of that with right here, literary imagination, I thought was very interesting. And especially the way that this sort of pushes back against or creates a problem for some of what the new materialists want to do. I think, as I recall, she's somewhat wanting to problematize Jane Bennett's work in some way. I can't remember exactly. It has something to do with anthropomorphism. So anyway, so it's by Babette B. Tischleder. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, or who that is actually. Maybe I can just look that up real quick. Who is this person? She's professor of North American Studies and Media and director of the Department of English at George August University of Göttingen, Germany. It sounds like this was a part of a larger project, because she wrote a book called The Literary Life of Things, Case Studies in American Fiction. She sounds like a boss. Okay. Alright, so let's get into it. It's not too long. And there's an abstract here. I think I will read this. Oh, this was published in 2018 in the De Gruyter Open Cultural Studies Journal. Sorry, I don't know if I should be setting up what I'm reading at all, or if I just kind of get into it. I haven't decided yet. All right. Abstract. The new materialisms constitute a rich field of critical inquiry that does not represent a unified approach. Yet there is a general tendency to theorize objects by highlighting their agency, independence, and withdrawnness from human actors. Jane Bennett speaks of, quote, thing power, in order to invoke the activities of non-subjects, and she suggests to marginalize questions of human subjectivity and focus instead on the trajectories and propensities of material entities themselves. This essay takes issue with Bennett's and other new materialist thought, and it also offers a critical engagement with Bruno Latour's notion of non-human agency. In his recent work, Latour has been concerned with the question of how we can tell our common geo-story. Taking up his literary example by Mark Twain, and adding one of my own by William Faulkner. This essay argues that our understanding of the powers of rivers and other non-human agents remain rather limited if we attend primarily to the mechanics of storytelling in the way Latour does. Rather, it is the aesthetic and experiential registers of literary worlding that offer alternative venues for imagining non-human beings and our interactions with them in the era of the Anthropocene. So, you get the idea there. Okay, it starts off with a poem from Sterling Plump. Oh yeah, that was another thing too. After the poem, this does begin in a bit of poetry, which is actually quite nice. Okay, here we go. He bent strings, and my grandfather's fields were flooded, and I stood out on a red clay hill, looking at the pain I used to feel. The blues he played built the levee, as the river within him ran down through my eyes, and my pen trembled like Lucille does when BB's tender fingers stroke her hair in tongues. By Sterling Plump with 2 P's. Cool name. All right. The Mediterranean on a calm September night, floating in a sea kayak. The sound of gently breaking waves in the middle distance. In front of you, an expanse of blue and silver in constant, tranquil motion. No painter, not even Richter, subtle master of shades and light, can capture this moment. Any moment out here. Minutes dissolve into movement, lose their contours, become oblivious to the measuring of time. Neither space nor shape can be chopped up into sights. It's a shape-shifting element. It's all around you. Your body, the only medium capable of resounding its stillness in silver blue, the surface as it stretches and ripples, the smooth tension of water that lifts you up on its colors, sways you on gently rolling hills. All solidity has given way to the flow of fading hues, coming at you, swathing you, going right through you, wetting your skin, expanding, dispersing. One big body, you part of it rather than center. While the orange is slowly dropping for the day, there remains the timeless swinging, swelling, melting. An unbroken medium, holding the tension, and holding you in your plastic cradle, glazed with seawater. A breeze of pine wakes another sense. You wonder where from, out here, mingling with the blue and unseen green. A recollection of water's sway as the sun is setting. Can we call this a story? If so, who would be the characters? Or better, or should we better say, actants? The sea, the currents, the breeze? The warmth of a late summer day? Or is this simply an expression of independent think power, as Jane Bennett would have it, an assemblage of elements, water, wind, light, that impress themselves on the mind, yet act independently of human doing? From the perspective of object-oriented ontology, we cannot know the entities in question, even if we weave them into words and sentences. They are withdrawn, doing their own thing. The scene presented here is quite obviously entirely suffused with humanness. A small window on the world, a moment, a bounded perception, an embodied experience. You don't usually get sort of extended poetry at the beginning of a academic article, so it's refreshing. Such evident subjectivity does not square with a philosophy oriented toward objects, that is, as an independent reality of object being, and that, accordingly, projects an ontological beyondness where entities come into their own at a remote distance from human knowledge, design, and desire. Meanwhile, other new materialists are interested precisely in the way that human and non-human agencies interact in complex associations and assemblages. In this essay, I take up some of the critical questions raised in current debates on materiality, objects, and the agency of the non-human in the Anthropocene. Thing theory, actor network theory, speculative realism, and other approaches in the field of current materialist thought offer innovative ways of rethinking the active role of inanimate objects, the relations between people and things, as well as those activities and interactions that are seen to be independent of humanity's impact. Different as these approaches are, one premise they share is that things are alive and kicking. The object world is no longer perceived as inert matter or mere extension, screen, or backdrop of human action or consciousness, but as having its own vitality. Actor network theory has inspired us to see things as part of the larger networks of human and non-human actants, in the range of interobjectivity, as Bruno Latour has called it. of late includes an ever-widening array of objects, from urban transport systems to maritime habitats, from the substances active in our planet's stratosphere to those in our intestines. Accordingly, the planes of action addressed are as diverse as cloud computing and global warming, primate societies and recycling facilities, molecules and microbes. This is a thing that new materialists love to do. They like to just list like the random objects next to each other. Like literally any new materialist thing you read, you're gonna get lists of like random objects. It's always interesting the ones they pick too, because it's always just an aesthetic choice, right? It's a way of kind of sneaking in. Here's what I think are interesting. Nobody's gone the route of the ridiculous, I think, except maybe Timothy Morton. He has probably the best sense of humor of all the new materialist, speculative realist crew. Yeah, I would make it as ridiculous as possible though. Be like camels and buttons and Santa Claus and oh wait a minute, Santa Claus isn't an object. Shit. See, this is why I can't. I'd be kicked out of the club in 2 seconds. Alright. Situating my own approach to object life necessitates taking issue with some of the premises that define recent materialist and ontological thought, particularly regarding questions of relationality, agency, storytelling, and the vitalism of the object world. I will engage with two theorists who have received much attention in new materialist debates, Bruno Latour and Jane Bennett, and just briefly touch upon other ontological approaches. I consider Bennett's Vibrant Matter, A Political Economy of Things, and Latour's 2014 essay, Agency at the Time of the Anthropocene, contemplating how they both draw on literary figuration in their respective take on the agency and vibrancy of objects. How are Bennett's notion of thing power and Latour's project of writing our common geostory informed by their respective form of storytelling? How can actor network theory, as Rita Felsky asked, help literary studies to reimagine practices of reading and interpretation, and vice versa? I will attend to both the affordances and the constraints of object-oriented theorizing, and relating it to my own work on the life of things, propose how literary and cultural studies can expand the imaginative scope of critical materialism by considering object life and thingness through a literary lens. Reading Latour's discussion of the Mississippi River, which serves him as one agent of geostory, along with William Faulkner's 1954 essay, Mississippi, I will further consider the way these texts stage the interaction of the river, the land, and the inhabitants, including novelists, engineers, and geologists. I ask how non-human agency is imagined in these different accounts, Latour's critique of scientific reasoning and embrace of narrative, and Faulkner's rendering of the Mississippi's erratic powers. All right, the heading here is Theoretical Perspectives. Bennett's Vibrant Matter has little in common with traditional materialisms inspired by Marx, in that it shifts the emphasis from the human to the non-human. She deliberately leaves aside questions of subjectivity for the sake of developing a vocabulary and syntax, and therefore a better discernment of the active powers issuing from non-subjects. While the innovative potential of the new materialism certainly lies in this shift to the non-human, it also entails significant blind spots. Neither conflating the life of things with human biographies, as anthropology tends to do, nor singling out scenes of independent object agency, as Bennett does, grants us a view of the bigger picture. Hey, bud. Okay? Come here. What are you doing up? Okay. Let's see how much more we can get through here. While it is important to remember that physical things continue to exist after their social lives, in a narrow sense, have ended, we need to complicate the stories we tell about their active trajectories and take into account the complex economic as well as cultural dynamics of obsolescence, which entail tendencies of both supersession and persistence. Bennett's political theology of things sets out from a scene of discarded objects that continue to unfold their vital activities as trash, accumulating and thriving in the shadow of consumer practice. Thing power denotes the lively power of material formation, non-human forces that reside in and emanate from quasi-agents such as minerals and metals, oxides and acids. Such agents are seen to have trajectories, propensities, or tendencies of their own. She cites Robert Sullivan's rendering of a dump in the Meadowlands, a nonfiction account of the author's voyage to the wetlands and toxic, disposable world of Northeast New Jersey that serves Bennett as an illustration of vibrant materiality and the force of things. There's a quote here from Robert Sullivan. The garbage hills are alive. There are billions of microscopic organisms. I just feel like we need a Jersey version after that line of The Sound of Music. But it's just very Jersey. The garbage hills are alive. There are billions of microscopic organisms thriving underground in dark, oxygen-free communities. After having ingested the tiniest portion of leftover New Jersey or New York, these cells then exhale huge underground plumes of carbon dioxide and of warm, moist methane, giant stillborn tropical winds that seep through the ground to feed the Meadowlands fires, or creep up into the atmosphere where they eat away at the ozone. Granted, the dump circumscribes a region where material life unfolds, independent of human doing. Okay, I don't think this is gonna work with just random YouTube videos in the background, so I'm gonna call it quits for today. We didn't get very far, but that's okay. We'll try to wrap this up tomorrow.